I'm Stacy. Welcome to the kitchen of my old Kentucky home. Today on Bourbon and Biscuits, we're going to be cooking with one of my favorite ingredients, Kentucky sorghum. We're going to cook with it and cocktail with it. Let's get started. We'll be putting a Kentucky twist on hot wings. Here's what we'll need. 2 pounds of chicken wings, 1 tablespoon of olive oil, 1/4 teaspoon each of paprika, salt, and pepper, 1/4 cup of soy sauce, 1/4 cup of sorghum, 2.5 tablespoons of hot sauce, 2 tablespoons of butter, 2 tablespoons of vinegar, and 1 teaspoon of garlic. Well, I don't know about you, but I find it hard to go to a game or a tailgate without wanting some hot wings. And of course, there are a lot of different recipes out there. I found a way to Kentucky up my version with using Kentucky sorghum. So what we're gonna need: 2 pounds of chicken wings. Now we have clipped these into nice, 2 pieces. You can also leave that last wing tip on it. Some people call them a flapper. I like mine kind of nice and tidy. So we just broke them into 2 pieces. I've got some olive oil. Now you can use vegetable oil or canola oil if you'd like. I've used a smoked paprika. You can use a Hungarian paprika or a regular paprika. Just have regular old cracked ground pepper. Now for the salt, I also went a little crazy. You can just use regular table salt or sea salt. I got this bourbon smoked sea salt from Bourbon Barrel Foods. This is a company that we use a lot locally, and I love the flavor of this. So all we're gonna do is mix this around. Just get all of our chicken pieces nice and coated. And if you like, once you get this to the pan, you can also add a little more salt and pepper if you don't think it got all around. Ours actually looks pretty coated. I've prepared a baking pan simply with some aluminum foil, and I went on and just sprayed with a little light oil spray. It just helps release once they've come out of the oven. We're just gonna distribute these so they can cook evenly. And I've got the oven set to 420, and we're gonna cook these about 20-25 minutes until they get golden brown. So we're just gonna take these to the oven. While our chicken is baking, we're gonna whip up our wing sauce. So we've got our sorghum. As I said, this is probably one of my favorite ingredients. It's just gonna add some sweetness and flavor to one of my other favorite ingredients of all time, Frank's hot sauce, which is more your traditional buffalo wing hot recipe. And we've got some soy sauce, and this particular brand is that bluegrass soy sauce from Bourbon Barrel Foods. Get some garlic. You can also use fresh garlic. I tend to use either. This one mixes up a little better, I think. We've got vinegar. I'm just using apple cider. You can just use a white distilled vinegar or balsamic as well. And then I've got some butter. And we're just gonna bring this to a simmer, and we're just going to cook this down till it reduces by about half. We are ready for the final step of our hot wings recipe. We've just taken them out of the oven. They became a nice golden brown. Some people fry these, but this is perhaps a little healthier, well, at least until we put our butter sorghum sauce on them. And that's all we're gonna do. We've reduced this to about half of its original makeup. It's a nice kind of, can coat like the back of a spoon. I'm just gonna pour that all over and just give this a good toss. So you might be wondering, if you're not from these parts, what even is sorghum? And sorghum, in this sense, you saw it used much like a syrup. A lot of people confuse it with like a blackstrap molasses, which it is very similar to that. Basically, sorghum is a grain, an old world grain. It was brought over from Africa, and really popular throughout the eastern seaboard in the Midwest, because unlike sugarcane that's grown in more tropical climates, sorghum has to be, or can be, in more temperate climate as well. So very popular in Kentucky. It grew extremely popular during the Civil War when the North had its supply of sugarcane cut off, so people began using sorghum much more as a substitute. Now it does come in cane form, so it has to be harvested and boiled down just to be used as syrup. It cannot crystallize like white table sugar. But it can be used in recipes and like as a substitute for honey or molasses. And it just has a little bit more of, some people describe it as a pungent or a rustic flavor. In more culinary terms, you might call it umami. I like that deeper flavor that it has. Now, after the Civil War, it kind of grew out of popularity because the sugarcane was in abundant supply again. But in Kentucky, it's really retained its popularity all these years. Like I said, it's something that I grew up on. My grandparents had it all the time, and we cooked with it. And that was perhaps because of a couple reasons. One is that it was still very cheap to come by. You could harvest it and grow it, and it became very popular still, and to this day, in the mountainous Appalachian region. Nowadays, sorghum is making a comeback, not only in southern recipes, but also because of the grain itself. It is gluten-free. So a lot of people, you're seeing it being used in salads and as a side dish, not as the syrup, but as the actual grain. So here are chicken wings, but now we're gonna go see what Jessica's gonna cook up using sorghum in a cocktail.
Today we're gonna make a cocktail called the Bitter Southerner No. 1. I got this cocktail recipe from a modern Southern blog called The Bitter Southerner. This is part of a cocktail series that they're doing with some of their favorite bartenders. This bartender's name is Jerry Slater, and he's Atlanta-based, but he actually spent 7 years behind the bar at Louisville's historic Seelbach Hotel. So today we're gonna use Rabbit Hole Bourbon, Fernet Branca, whiskey barrel-aged bitters, sorghum syrup, and orange peel to garnish. All right, so in a mixing glass, we're gonna use 2 ounces of bourbon. The original recipe called for Booker's, but I'm just gonna use another kind of higher proof. This one is 95 proof from a local Louisville distillery that just opened. And we're gonna use 3/4 of an ounce of Fernet. This is an herbal liqueur. And we're gonna use 2 dashes of these whiskey barrel-aged bitters. And this is the sorghum syrup that I made. If you use straight sorghum, it's gonna be too thick and it won't blend into the cocktail. So I did equal parts of the sorghum syrup and water and brought it to a boil to incorporate it together. And that's 3/4 of an ounce of this as well. And then you're gonna wanna let that cool before you make your cocktail. So we're just gonna add a large ice cube here and stir this until it's all well chilled. And then we're just gonna strain this into our coupe glass. You could use a martini glass also. And I'm gonna garnish it with just the peel of an orange, not an orange wedge for the juice. I just wanna get those kind of essential oils off there to add a little bit of fragrance. So you'll give that, try to peel it and not get very much of the white, just get that outside rind part, and squeeze it right over your cocktail glass, and you'll get some of those oils that come out, and just line the rim like that. And there you have it, it's the Bitter Southerner No. 1.
Now, Jessica, you grew up with sorghum too, right?
I did, yeah.
Okay. One of my favorite ways to eat it is not really a recipe at all, but it's literally my grandparents would pour it over a pat of butter and take 2 back sides of a fork, very important, and just mix it up and put it on a biscuit.
Yep, I've always liked that too. And I didn't grow up with this, but I think it works great in cocktails because the sorghum flavor is a little bit more complex, and so rather than a honey or just a sugar syrup, it adds a little bit more to the drink. But there's actually a sorghum connection with cocktails that you might not have known.
Probably not.
During Prohibition, it became really popular to start growing sorghum because it's easier than corn and makes great moonshine.
Is that right?
But actually now it's becoming kind of popular again to use in making rum. And there's actually a distillery in Kentucky, in Danville, that is making a sorghum rum now.
Ah, Wilderness Trail.
Yeah.
Well, we can check that out on my next center tailgate with my children. They're in college, which leads me to this, buttermilk sorghum dressing that I did as a dipping sauce for the chicken wings is actually a combination of their love for Bojangles sauce that we pick up on the way to the tailgates if I don't make these, and a recipe inspiration out of the book that you gave me, that your mother's, the Sorghum Savor. So Ronnie Lundy kind of inspired me with this. It's kind of a ranch base meets Bojangles sauce with a touch of sorghum, and you can get the recipe and all of these at culinarylouisville.com.
And we'll see you next time on Bourbon
And Biscuits.
Cheers!